Hey guys, this week I'm going to show you how to install some recessed lights. Stick around. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of BS with AJ. As I said before, this week we're going to be installing some recessed lights into our living room. We are going to be wiring them up in series, which is a pretty simple wiring process and should be pretty easy to follow along with. We're also going to be putting a dimmer switch on. Now we're going to have to cut this into two videos because it's a little bit too long to do one video. But don't worry, we're going to be sure to put that video, the second part, up next week. If you like videos like this, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and consider supporting BS with AJ on Patreon so we can do bigger and better projects for you guys. Also, be sure and click that notification bell so you know when I post new videos. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down in the comment section below. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, for this project, here's the materials you're going to need. We have a 50-foot roll of 14-2 wire. The 14-2 means it is 14 gauge, and the 2 stands for it has 2 wires plus a ground. We have a roll of electrical tape, some wire nuts. We have the dimmable switch here we're going to be installing, and then the cover for it. We've got the staples for up in the ceiling to staple down the wire so you don't accidentally kick it around once it's all installed. We have the light switch box here. We have 2 of the can lights. Now I will say these are both sealed because I plan on insulating over them later. You don't have to get the sealed boxes, but because I'm going to be putting more insulation in the house later on, I decided to go ahead and do that. You don't want to accidentally blow insulation through the holes in the other ones. And we also have a 2-pack of the LED modules that we're going to be installing in these. As far as tools go, what you're going to need is a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips screwdriver, some wire cutters, some wire strippers. Voltage detector is very important. They're fairly cheap. I spent $10 to get this one. And this is very important because you always want to check and make sure there's no voltage going to any of the wires you're about to touch. That could save your life. That's very important. Tape measure you're going to need. Some source of light. I've got a drop light here, and I've also got a headlamp I'm going to be using because the more lights you have, the easier it is to work. I've got some rope and the fish rods. This is going to be used, both of those are going to be used to pull the wires up through the wall. You're going to need something to drill a hole with, so I've got a drill here and a couple different drill bits. This one here is going to be the pilot the hole, and that one's going to be to drill the hole. It's a 3/4 inch drill bit to drill the hole to put the wires down through. You're also going to need something to cut the holes out for your light fixtures. I'm going to be using a jigsaw. You can use a sawzall or a hand saw, whatever you feel comfortable using. You're also going to need a ladder of some sort. I've got a 6-foot ladder. You could probably get away with an 8-foot or a 4-foot depending on how tall you are and how tall your ceilings are. Alright, the first thing you're going to want to do is decide where you're going to set your light fixtures at. Since I'm installing 2 of them, I measured from the entire width of the room and I divided it into 3 equal sections, which gave me 52 inches. Alright, so I measured off the right wall over 52 inches, and then I measured off the left wall over 52 inches. And I put my marks there. Now off the back wall that you're seeing with the 2 pictures, I measured off that about 2.5 foot because I plan on putting those center of my front door, and that's exactly center of my front door. So you can set it up however you'd like. That's just the way I've set mine up. Alright, now that you got your place marked that you're going to put your light fixture, we're going to go ahead and drill a pilot hole, and then we're going to stick one of the glow-in-the-dark fish rods up through here, tape it in place, and we'll go up in the attic and make sure that we're not going to have to move it one way or the other to avoid a stud. Alright, now we're going to take this fish rod and stick up through here, and we'll tape it in place. Alright, now I'm going to run upstairs in the ceiling and see if we're going to have to move our fixture one way or the other to avoid a stud. Alright, now we got the center of this pattern here on our center mark. So we're just going to come around here and trace the outside. You want to get it as close as you can because the way the can lights are set up, it has a lip on the outside that's going to set up against the ceiling, and then it also has little arms on the inside that's going to push against the inside of the ceiling to hold it into place. So you want to make sure that you get this as close as you can so that your light is held up properly. Now, as you can see, we did have to move our hole about 2 inches over. Now that's not a big deal. As long as we move the other one over to make it match, it's going to look fine. Alright, now we are going to drill a couple more holes to make this easier to cut out with our jigsaw. We're going to put one in the center here, and then 4 more on the outside edges, so that way we can cut over and then cut a quarter at a time, so that way it comes out easier. Alright, now to cut the hole out for your switch box. Now I measured from the ground to the bottom of this 49 3/8, and I measured from this edge over 5 inches. Now the reason I got those measurements is because I'm trying to get these two as close as I can, so that way there's no gap at all, or if there, if there is very little one. The reason I'm doing this instead of putting a double switch box here is because, one, it's easier. I don't have to take all this apart and try and pry it off the stud or anything. But also because this switch here is on a different circuit, and I don't want to have to cut the power off to the whole house to be able to work on one switch or the other. Whenever I go to get into one box, I don't have to worry about this power still being on. There's no safety hazard there. It should be good. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and drill 4 holes, one in each of these corners, so that way I can get my jigsaw blade in here and cut each different direction. Now it's time to find the wire you're wanting to tie your lights to. Now the way I've done it was I went to the breaker box and I found the one labeled living room. Alright, now then I had somebody down at the breaker box to turn it off when I told them to. I got up here in the attic and started looking around and trying to find the wire that would run that way, and I found one that I thought might be it. So what I do is I turn my voltage meter on, and then you test it first. It definitely has power right now. And then you want to call down to them and tell them to turn that breaker off. And once they have it off and you test it again, this should stay green. If it does not stay green, that's not your right wire. You want to try a different one until you find that wire whenever you turn that breaker off. Now I've already had this figured out while I had some help before, so I know this is the right wire. I tested this now to show you that it's still on. And now I'm going to go down to the breaker and turn it off, and then I'll test it again to show you what it's supposed to look like when there's no power to it. Alright, I went downstairs and turned the breaker off. Now we're going to test it to make sure it doesn't have any voltage to it. And as you can see, the light's staying green, so that means there's no voltage, there's no power going to this. Alright, now what we're going to do is go ahead and take this junction box right here and attach it to this 2x4. And once we get that done, we're going to go ahead and splice this wire in here and start running our power to our ceiling fan. Alright, now just to be sure, we're going to go ahead and test our voltage one more time before we cut this. Because you don't want to get shocked by that. That will not be fun. Alright, shows we're still good. Alright, now what we're going to do is just go ahead and cut this, now that we know there's no power to it. And we're going to go ahead and get it spliced into this box here. The first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and strip these back about 3/4 of an inch or so. Alright, now what we're going to do is just go ahead and connect all the whites together and then connect all the blacks together. So we'll take them all three of them, line them up here, and we'll go ahead and get our wire nut put on. I'll make sure they're all in there good. Alright. Then we'll do the same thing to our black wire here. Alright, now those are all ready to go. Now I'm sure you've noticed my old wires here don't have a ground wire, but the new wire that I'm adding here does. Now the only way to truly ground this would be to run another wire from here all the way down to the breaker box. Now I don't have a means to do that at the moment, so I'm just going to leave it loose in the box here, but I am going to come back and do that later. So right now, what I'm going to do from here on out, I'll be hooking the grounds all together, and I'll be attaching it to the boxes and everything, make sure it's all perfectly ground, so that when I come back and run this wire, all I have to do is connect to here, and then run straight down to the breaker box. Alright, so once you have all that done, and you have all your wires run you need, what you're going to do is go ahead and take your box top, and put right on here, and screw it all down. That way nothing can touch these wires. Alright, now we're about to drill the hole for our switch. Now the way I did this was I measured off the outside wall over to where the plug was, where I was going to put it. So I measured over and it was 18 foot, about 8 inches or so. So that's right in this area. I've already measured it out and everything. We're going to use a 3/4 inch drill bit. And we're going to find a spot that's not going to hit any of these other wires here. So let's go, we'll say right about here. Alright, now what we're going to do is go ahead and take our fish rod and run down our hole that we just drilled. And I've got somebody down there that's going to grab the rod and they're going to tape the rope onto it. I'm going to pull the rope up here and then we'll tape the wire onto the rope. Right, now we're going to go ahead and pull this rope up until our wire comes through the hole. Alright, now we're going to stretch this over to the junction box, and you want to make sure that you have a little extra. I normally try to pull mine past the junction box, probably about 1 foot. I'll go ahead and tie it in then, and then we can go down to the bottom and cut it off. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and check this again and make sure there's no voltage on any of these wires. Looks like we're good to go. Alright, so now we're going to open up this box. Set all that to the side, and we're going to go ahead and splice into these wires right here. Alright, now what we're going to do, I've already gone ahead and stripped these wires here. We're going to go ahead and push them through one of the holes on the junction box. And then we're simply going to start connecting the colors together. All the blacks are going to go together, all the whites are going to go together, and then of course we're going to put our grounds together also. So let's go ahead and start with the ground. Alright, those two are good. Alright, now then, we'll take off our wire nut on the black ones. We'll go ahead and put this one right here with it. As you can see, we have several wires going to this one, so we want to make sure that each one of them are on there tight. So kind of tug on them just a hair and make sure they're all staying on tight. Alright, they're all in there good. We'll do the same thing to our white one. Alright, make sure that they're all in there good. Alright, all those wires are tied together good. And then we'll just push them down here in the box. And we'll go ahead and put our cover back on. Alright, now we've just connected our power to our switch downstairs that we just ran the wire to. So we're going to go ahead and run another wire up from that switch over to the first light. Alright, now I've gone ahead and drilled a second hole here. And what we're going to do is we're going to run another wire from the same switch up to our first light. So I've gone ahead and drilled a second hole. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and do the same thing we did a while ago. Run the rod down here. We'll tie the rope onto it. And then we'll go from there. Alright, now we're going to pull our rope until our wire comes up through this hole. Alright. Now we're definitely going to pull this past both of our lights because we're going to end up splicing into the first light and then cutting the wire and then taking that extra wire and running to the second light. So I'm just going to stretch it on past a foot or two past the second light. Alright guys, well that's all the time we have for this video, but we'll be sure and finish up this project next week. So if you like videos like this, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and consider supporting BS with AJ on Patreon so we can do bigger and better projects for you guys. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when I post new videos. We'll see you next week.